Welcome to the Sounds of the World. We are your hosts, Hillary and Bill.
Together, we're going to travel around the world to discover new music, discuss musical topics, and interview fascinating people.
Our world is a buffet of music, and it is time to eat. Hey everybody, this is Bill.
And this is Hillary.
From Sounds of the World podcast. And we just want to remind you that if you live in the United States, to make sure to get registered to vote. November 3rd is Election Day. In these states, as September goes into October, registration dates are expiring soon. So make sure that you check your state official rules, get registered to vote, and make sure you go out to vote. This is a pivotal election for everybody. So make sure that you do this. This is our civic duty.
So important. You may feel like your voice doesn't matter. It absolutely matters. Let your voice be heard. Get your ass out there and go vote.
Yeah, do it. And after you're done, go get some beer. All right, we have a very special guest here today. He began his musical life playing cello, piano, and percussion at a local music school in Malmö, Sweden. He studied musicology at the Lund University before falling into a passionate love affair with music composition. He was later accepted to the composition department at the Musikhögskolan in Malmö, where he studied from 1998 to 2005 with such great professors as Rolf Mortensen, Hans Gefors, Ken Olofsson, Per Martinsson, and Lars Sandberg. During his diploma studies, his main professor was Luca Francesconi. His music has been performed at festivals for new music such as the Ung Nordisk Musik, Stockholm New Music, and the Siren Festival in Gothenburg, Sweden. In 2006, his work, The Thread of War, was performed twice by the Royal Stockholm Philharmonic Orchestra with Michael Christie at the baton. He's also received grants from the Swedish Royal Musical Academy, Helge Ax, Annik och Lars Leander, Rosenberg and German's Composition Study Scholarship, and many more. He later received an invitation from the New European Ensemble to become the first composer in residence of the group. This residency led to 3 to 4 new works, and in 2011, his chamber symphony, Bells and Waves, was awarded the most significant chamber work of the year by the Swedish Music Publishers Association. In 2019, he had 2 performances of his opera, Hilma, at the Guggenheim in New York City. It is a great honor to be able to talk with him today. Please welcome Benjamin Staern.
Oh, thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks. It's a pleasure. Yeah, nice to meet you all, and also to your listeners also.
Yeah, so it's quite the I don't want to say pedigree, but just like the academic background and the success you've had. It's amazing.
I'm amazed myself. It's like when I look back, what kind of education I have. I mean, it's like I don't pay so much attention to that. It feels like, oh my God, wow, what has happened to me for the past 20 years? I mean, it's actually up to 30 years to be more specific. But so I mean, it's a long story, but it's like I mean, to be frank, I've been quite active as a composer for 20 years. I mean, consecutive years since my studies here at the Academy of Music in Malmö, mostly for 7 years or so. So it was very intense time back then also, and also I had a degree also in musicology a year before. Cool. So, but. When I started, I started to play cello because, and also did some piano also and some drums and percussion. I mean, it's basically I trained in percussion just to get to know the rhythmic context of my music. I mean, probably has even though I was a good drummer, but still I got to thinking inside right. What was. I mean, the concept. I mean, the conceptual concept of rhythm came to pass. I mean, and also to decipher complex rhythmic stuff. I mean, in scores. Because since I have this phenomenon called perfect pitch, which I will talk later on. I mean, so I started the cello also. That was my first instrument. I studied also composition or music theory as first. I studied privately at the same time I was in high school, and I was actually going to be a cellist at first, which might sound a little bit weird, because I was actually quite good on cello, but the thing I wanted to express couldn't be expressed in my fingers. So I felt my strong voice or my strong asset was actually to compose music. So that's why I started very heavily for many years music theory, and also subsequently counterpoint, and also instrumentation and arranging. That was the main thing, I drew scores when I was already actually musical notes when I was 7. I mean, very simple notes. I still have these sheets that were just like shoot boxes of scores, like 600 pages or something. I mean, just to learn the basics of how to copy a score, basically. From that point, I wrote something wrong on that page. I felt like, oh my God! It was like, this must be artists in some way. I wrote some wrong pictures, then eventually became one of my own tunes all of a sudden. It's like if you improvise on the piano on a simple tune. I mean, it could be a nursery rhyme or something. If you play a one note wrong, it feels like, hey, what happens if I use these pitches instead? Take for instance, Twinkle Little Star. If you misplace one of the notes, then it automatically will turn into different kind of music. I mean, different kind of piece, more or less.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like changing the colors, more or less. And I mentioned perfect pitch. I assume that it's quite uncommon, but for me it's very common, because what it means with the concept of perfect pitch, it means that once I hear one pitch, I can hear that. I mean, if you sing a note D, for instance, that's D for me. So I could easily hear when one singer fell out of tune many times, because I was brought up with my parents. When my father was a conductor and my mother was an opera singer. So,
cool.
Because I basically grew up in an opera house.
Okay.
And especially, when I heard many of these opera shows and musical shows also, I mean, they played Sound of Music, Kiss Me Kate, or La Traviata, and all these repertoire operas that you can ever think of. I mean, some of the singers were not too great, so they sometimes sang out of tune, and I felt sick all the time. There must be something wrong with me. I felt like something problem with my stomach. I felt like I was going to puke or something. So, and it happened to me several times when I would try to sing in a chorus at high school, because all the soprani sang out of tune completely.
Yeah.
I felt like
it's very normal for high school.
I mean, it's like, I felt like, what the heck is this? Should I do with music, or am I totally sick or something? I felt like because especially when we're going to transpose another song to one higher key than it was noted in the score. I mean, it was deaf. Yes, it was complete. And I felt like, oh my God, how am I going to survive this? So there must be something wrong with me. So I felt like, should I ever do with music? I could go in society studies anyway. So I felt like, but time went, and I entered the university. I studied musicology for some time. Actually, for one semester. I studied musicology, and then I came to pass with this chapter about expressionism, because we read music history. So I was very interested in expressionism, and with Schoenberg and all the collaboration with Kandinsky. And so I felt like, wow, Kandinsky, I heard that before, because my aunt is an art teacher.
Okay.
So she showed me some sketches by Kandinsky at an art exhibition in Verona, Italy. So and she showed me, I mean, look at these sketches by Kandinsky. This exactly looks like Schoenberg's music. It's like, okay, now I store that in my archive somewhere. And then 5 years later, during my studies, this confrontation with both Schoenberg and Kandinsky fell into place. And Kandinsky wrote a book called Concerning the Spiritual and the Arts. And in that book, it says about the color's impact on your brain and onto your central nervous system.
Right.
And from there, I suddenly discovered that there was one passage that said that when I heard Wagner's Lohengrin at the Bolshoi Theater, I saw everything in yellow color.
Oh, wow.
And then all of a sudden, bam, Shazam, I see colors also. I have synesthesia.
Okay.
So I felt like, oh my God, it was a sort of an aha thing. It's like, yeah, I have synesthesia. So that was the whole concept, the whole story of me seeing in colors. What synesthesia means is that, synesthesia is a very vast topic to speak about. It's not just in music. It's also in numbers, figures, letters, days, tastes, smells, whatever. But in my case, it's involved with pictures. Let's say if you take a note C, that's for me white color, and a note D, that's brown color, and then note E is like golden brown or something, and then F is turquoise, and then G is green color, and A is yellow, and then B is beige color. I don't know. Is it correct to say that in America? I don't know.
Yes.
Beige color. Yeah, beige color. Yes.
Yep.
Then the other notes like C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, G sharp. That's okay. F sharp is more or less magenta.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask if like the sharps and things were like a mixture of the colors next to it, or if they were like actually legit different colors. So.
Legit different colors, more or less.
Wow.
And then G sharp is for me red. And then,
okay.
And then B flat. Okay, pay attention. That is blue color.
That's awesome.
I know it's a contradiction for some, but and E flat that is I think it's purple.
A purple?
Purple blue or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I made a chart of these colors with this chromatic scale of colors.
Yes. I love it.
and it's the same kind of color pattern no matter which octave you are at. But the only difference is that if it goes higher in pitch, the colors become brighter. And if it's if it goes deeper in the register, then the colors become more darker.
Okay, very cool.
And many people ask me, what is black color for you? It's complete silence.
Oh. Yeah, because you said he was white, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was white. Yeah,
he was white. Yeah, exactly. So black is complete silence. And then gray color is more or less like if it's a sort of a, how you could say, it could be a sort of a cluster with different pitches at once. Yeah, exactly. And also, or if it's like microtones, this is even more interesting. It's like if it becomes a sort of a Mandelbrot-like color, it's a sort of morphing into different kind of colors at once. It becomes a sort of a nausea feeling.
Oh, wow.
Probably the sort of traumatic experience with intonation.
Kind of getting your senses hijacked involuntarily, and you're just having to react.
Exactly. So, yeah. But that's. I've been tolerant to other kind of intonations since I heard other types of music from beyond Western music, like for instance, maqam in Arabic music, and also raga and also. Japanese music and Chinese, and also Indonesian, gamelan, for instance, which I've become more tolerant because since we had this in program from the beginning, from their nature. Especially for this gamelan scales and all the stuff, and because it looks like almost like New Age, more or less. so that's how I made my discovery. So, but I'm still researching on. How the colors will affect me in one more or less. It's a sort of an ongoing update, more or less, in my research when it comes to colors and pitches and so forth. But in order to people to understand what kind of colors I see, you have to put into something concrete. For instance, country context, it could be like a sort of an instrument like a cello or piano or whatever, or it could be like a tree or for instance, Northern Lights, which this piece that I wrote during my residency at the European Ensemble was a piece called Saya, which means in Japanese colors. which is based on Northern Lights.
Mm-hmm.
There was a sort of collaboration between me and a visual artist called Yoko Suyama, a Japanese friend that lives in Berlin, that works as a multimedia artist, which was sort of a multimedia project for 2 soloists and ensemble. So it was like a wordless opera, basically.
Oh, cool.
Oh, wow.
So you can find it on YouTube, some excerpts from that performance.
I need to check that out.
Yeah, and she has this sort of thing there was a sort of interaction project. So she had this thing for both Northern Lights and also this sort of origami crickets.
That's cool. Well,
Yeah,
Hillary also has synesthesia too.
Oh,
And hers
really?
is different just slightly.
Yeah, when I hear sound, I see textures, so I don't get the color centers, and it's all based on timbre. Like a violin is like a really thin line, and like the higher the pitch is, the thinner it is. The lower the pitch is, kind of fattens out a little bit. A
Okay.
trumpet looks like a flash of light. It's so hard to describe. Like the sun in the sky is kind of like what the brass timbre looks like. And it
Right.
vibrates and moves, and
But how does it happen? How does it happen when you listen to music or when you're a composer or something? Does it look like more or less like a visual art for yourself, or
yeah.
how does
And
it function?
I think I was in my like early 20s when I figured it out, because I used to just get so overwhelmed with sounds. I latched onto your word tolerate, and I remember it because I couldn't tolerate loud music. I couldn't tolerate a lot of stimulus, and I didn't know why. I would just get really nervous, and then I learned what synesthesia was, and I went, oh my God, I have that. Like, and I just, you start going down the wormhole trying to figure it all out.
I understand. Was it a sort of degree of density that you were afraid of them getting too exposed to extremely loud sounds?
Yeah, so like for example, like a club. If I go into a club without earplugs, like I feel it in my chest. Like I have this complete meltdown, or I'm like, it's too much.
I understand that. Yes.
Yeah, I wonder, does something similar happen to you? Like was it overwhelming to hear new kinds of music or loud kind of music, or because I feel like something, it's once and you start to understand it, that's how you can start to tolerate it because you're prepared for what's going to come. Or
yes. I try to remember. I've been to a few of these concerts where it was extreme loud, especially at clubs and also at the rock stadiums, for instance. I mean, for me, it's a sort of a horrifying experience. I had this horrifying experience when I actually played as a musician. I was playing the gong in a percussion section.
Uh-huh.
I didn't have any earplugs on. I was at this loud place in, I think it was, we played, I think it was playing Mahler 5 or something. It was this big clash in the second move. It was like, you're supposed to beat your tan like this, very loud.
Yeah.
I mean, and you get this sort of, and they get this sort of intense experience. You get this sort of harmonic seasickness or something.
Yeah. I'm like, I can relate to that. It's terrifying.
I mean, it becomes a sort of like, oh my God, this has hit my nerves. And it becomes a sort of, you get dizzy and you almost pass out. I mean,
yes.
Yes.
There was a concert in particular. It was the composer is Marco Ciciliani, and I believe he's Austrian, but he visited the University of Montana, which was a really amazing experience to get to, meet him and experience his music. But his big thing was kind of creating these walls of sounds. And he gave a concert for us, and he played like all 600 covers of the Beatles song Yesterday and at once. And so it was like, I felt like I was levitating. I was like, I don't know where I'm at. Like I was so disoriented.
Can you imagine? Yes. Yeah, because I remember this sort of intense feeling that you can make, especially in an electronic studio, you can put many sound files at a collage at once. I mean, places, I guess you've seen these YouTube videos where they have made this experiment with Beethoven, all symphonies at once.
Oh.
And you can create a sort of a mayhem for your brain. And it's like it's hard to keep track on which symphony to focus on. I mean, it's like it becomes a sort of you can create a sort of a mess for your brain, more or less. I mean, to keep track of which way to go. I mean, it's like chance operation. I mean, it's like upgraded. I mean, this John Cage concept with chance operation.
Yes.
Operation.
Yes.
Oh yeah. I was thinking about. I guess you heard about this. His later pieces like Europras, for instance, which he has a random way that one opera singer sings one aria for herself, and then she gets a sort of a piano accompaniment or piano rehearsing at a completely different piece at once. It creates a sort of a major contrasts, which is it's a wild concept. I mean, Charles Ives had this concept with his Fourth Symphony, for instance. I mean,
that was who I was thinking of. Ives.
Yeah, and also I guess you heard about. I guess it's a sort of a you could say almost like soundscape more. It's like Murray Schafer. I guess you heard about this. Talking about it in electronics. I mean, especially with this phenomenon with this soundscape, you have this environment. It doesn't even have to be an orchestra. It could be a sort of a in a park where you hear a lot of birds everywhere, or dogs barking, or car passing by, or kids playing, gangs are fighting, or whatever. I mean, there's a party going on. It creates a sort of a special mood. I mean, sort of a mood of sound. I mean, it's sort of it feels like you're looking at everything that's split screen at once.
Yeah. When I think of synesthesia and I think of the type that you have with color, I'm like, I don't know if I could handle that, but because I'm like, just color would seem so overwhelming. I was thinking of the comment you said where you felt sick in choir. Yeah. Was it just seeing like too many things at once that just kind of was freaking your body out, or kind of?
Yeah, because it was almost like a psychotic feeling, because you have to remain calm at once, and plus being receptive for what happens during the rehearsal with the choir members. I mean, especially reading the score at once. I mean, you feel like you feel like sort of disoriented with
yes,
since you have this sort of extreme input of impressions. I mean, I think it's like you could say the equivalent of watching a computer game these days. I mean, there's this 3D and all that stuff. I can't play these games because it gets too overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not used to that kind of environment. Probably my nephews can do that, but
my boyfriend loves to play, and he always like holds the controller toward me, like your turn, and I go, all I can do is Mario, where it's like one screen, you can die, like there's minimal distractions. But he'll play some of those things where, I mean, it's like he's spinning around and he can focus on it, and I'm like, okay, the motion. So the other part of the other synesthesia that I have is the opposite. So when I see motion, I hear sound that goes with it. So kind of the idea of like muting a television, but the sound doesn't go off. And it's these, and I don't quite know how to describe it because they're not these grand gestures. It's just kind of like these little blips and just little tiny like things that'll go on in my head. But so it's like when I watch him play the video games, I'm like, I feel sick to my stomach. I can't believe you're spinning around so much.
No, sure. But But how is your, if I may ask, your morning routine before you start working? I mean, do you have music in the morning, or is it completely silent? Because I cannot have music in the morning, because the only song I can focus on is the news, more or less.
So when I was younger, I used to commute. I had this 40-minute commute to work, and I like loved music. Like it was something like I would put it on and drive, and it just became this like experience. And the older I get, I turn on my NPR and I get my talk radio. I'm like,
for sure,
just want some minimal things. But I think for me, I can actually make it work, but it's because I'm just looking at textures and they're not quite, I feel like colors would be a lot harder to work with because,
for sure.
Yeah, I feel like you definitely have a more overwhelming version because I can tune mine out and I get kind of used to it. I actually love a little bit of noise in the background because when it's silent, I'm used to having all these like textures in my vision and like hearing these little gestures. So when it's like deaf silent, I start going stir crazy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if I do some fair copies of my scores, then I can have some voice in the background. It's no problem for me. But when I write music, I must have it completely silent, otherwise I get confused.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you're working on shaping your craft, and if you've got something brown that's interrupting your whole vision, and you're like, no, I'm in purple right now, or
no, for sure,
this isn't gonna work.
No, I mean, I can't really tell when I work. I mean, it's like when I'm into something, I become so immersed in my work. I get so involved so that I cannot really speak, or I become sort of a different person.
Right.
Not like a demon, but I become sort of. in a different kind of state, more or less.
So when you write, do you see like, do chords create a different color scheme for you, or do you see like feel like you're really kind of painting rather than just writing compositions?
See, well, it depends on the context. I mean, it's usually when I hear something, I see if I hear one melody, for instance, a melody line, I see each and every color one by one, more or less.
That's
And if I have chords, it becomes a sort of like a stream, almost like you could say like a thin lines. It depends on the texture and what kind of instruments also. You mentioned that the violin is like a thin red line or something, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
Or like a thin line. If it's like brass, it becomes more thicker. I mean, if it's percussion, it becomes like, I mean, so yes, it more or less looks like visual art, almost like like a Jackson Pollock painting, more or less. It depends on what kind of model. It could be like a Rothko painting, which I really adore a lot.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And Paul Klee also. Because I usually get the impulses from visual art many times, especially with this, or with Hilma recently. I mean, she's done a hell of a lot of paintings. I mean, it's like more than 1,000 paintings she produced during her life.
Wow.
And she lived in obscurity, more or less. Because one, she was a woman. Two, she was not allowed to show it to the public. She was 50 years ahead of her time.
Wow.
I mean, her paintings look is equivalent to Kandinsky, Malevich, Mondrian, and also I said one other painting. Paul Klee, yes, and she was advised to not show it to anyone. I mean, so 20 years after her death, it was first publicly shown, and now she's gained a renaissance, more or less, in the later years. So it's quite an interesting progress of her interest in her art, more or less. I mean, because there have been many exhibitions both in the US, in New York, and also in Sao Paulo in Brazil, and also all around Europe and in Stockholm and all kinds of places. But that's a side story, more or less. But basically, because when I wrote Hilma, I saw this altar image in front of me that looks almost like, this God's eye that is shown in churches. I mean, this with this pyramid with an eye on top.
Yes.
Because there is a picture that looks like an altar, standing point for creating the form of the entire opera. It's a sort of symmetric form. So it's like, since almost like a chiastic shape of it, which is So it has a beginning and then it has an end, more or less. But it doesn't go chronologically in the story. So it's in different directions at once. It's not like Snow Queen, where it has which is more or less like an A to B story, more or less.
Right.
Or A to Z. But it has different contrasts in a different, completed way. But it's a fairy tale. But Hilma is more or less like a thing between opera and oratorio.
Oh, okay.
It has this sort of almost like a religious move to it. I mean, it's like because I felt like it is almost like oratorio, like for instance, Bach's motets and also these cantatas he did. So since he has this sort of simple rhythmics and sort of more like plain speech.
Nice.
And some gestures also like reacting to an opera recitativo in an opera, and then you have an aria, even if it's not the aria in the way what you usually used to hear. So that's how I did the opera. I mean, because I basically follow the text. So since the text is the most important.
You're quite accomplished as an opera and vocal composer, but let's definitely talk about your orchestral things. I mean, the first time I ever met any of your music was Goodai.
Yes.
The concerto, right?
Exactly.
And then you also did another piece called Polar Vortex.
my first symphony.
Polar Vortex. I think that's such a beautiful piece. And
Yeah. It was actually the music comes from a result from this major work which I did the years before that. It was this wordless opera called Saya, and some of that music was I incorporated some of the best parts in the Saya production into the symphony. Came up with this solution: why don't I recycle the music? So I came up with this method called composting music.
How eco-friendly of you.
Exactly. So basically, I compose music, yes, but also recycle, compost music, compost pieces.
I'm going to steal this.
You have my blessing.
That's okay. I just admitted I would take it. No.
So I extracted that music from that performance. But I also eventually I had to create something completely new out of it from this material. So I felt like, what am I going to do? So then the news came, because I usually get affected by what goes on in the world. I mean, so like more or less my music has been symbolized. It hasn't been written in the media, but talked about. But more or less my friends like, yeah, you write doomsday music, more or less.
I love it.
What does that mean? Is it like Armageddon or something? Have I read the last, the last chapter of the Bible? I don't know.
Right.
But no, it's actually, it has a small backstory. When I was 10, I was really overexposed to MTV when I was a kid. So it was that year we had cable TV, and all of a sudden MTV was there. I mean, you saw this environmental videos, because sometimes we have this sort of political videos about the environment. Mm-hmm. And they told that if you don't take care of the nature, the world will come to an end all of a sudden, and it will create a problem. And I became frightened like hell. I was like, oh my God, is this it? I mean, is it going to be a nuclear disaster? Is it going to be a climate change, or is the world going on fire, or are we going to be submerged in water? I mean, I was terrified. So this sort of feelings has put a profound feeling to my other works. For instance, that's why I heard about this news about polar vortices that appears in the northern parts of United States and Canada, and which the temperature drops at least 100 degrees Fahrenheit minus.
I think I've lived through a couple of these polar vortexes.
Yeah, same here.
Really, yeah. Really that cold. I mean, so you cannot breathe almost.
Yeah, so there was one that happened. It was right when I got back from my master's in England, so I was like enjoying the mild winter of England, and then I came home and I was like, yep, back to Montana. But we had a particular snap where it was like minus 37 Fahrenheit, and I went to go start my car, and my car only reads to minus 22, so it wasn't telling me how cold it was. And my car shook violently, and I was like, I broke it. I don't know what I did. Like, all I did was turn the key, and it just was like sputtered to life. And I was like, oh my God. But you have to cover your mouth, because you can damage your lungs. They have this problem more so in North Dakota, next door to Montana, where you can get some severe lung damage if you don't cover up as you're breathing in. Wild. Luckily, that doesn't happen every winter in Montana.
Yeah.
North Dakota, I think it does, but
terrible. Yeah.
But it's hard. I mean, you're just kind of like, Okay,
Yeah.
I hope I don't get stuck. I hope I have enough gas in my car. I've got to have all my layers of clothing with me. And
Yeah, I was up in the northern part of Sweden, and while I was doing a recording session of my guitar concerto, Hours by Lights in Piteå, which is really far north, and
Mhm.
it was like let's say 160 centimeters of snow. It was like
Oh,
it's like almost 5 feet of snow. It's like
okay,
Wow.
yeah,
Jesus.
that's way worse than what I've got.
I mean, it's mad. You cannot barely open the door there practically. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but the thing is that the chill is not that chilly. It's more or less like a dry chill, more or less. I
Mhm.
mean,
It's more tolerable.
yeah, exactly. But here in Malmö, where I live, if it becomes snow, and then we have this very humid climate, so if it's really cold, it gets cold, even colder than the temperature itself. It becomes like, if it's like, let's say about 0 Fahrenheit. It feels like 20 Fahrenheit
Yeah,
minus.
I've
You can get,
yeah, when I was in England, I say mild winter, but I froze like right as at freezing, like 0 Celsius, 32 Fahrenheit. I had never felt so cold because I didn't bring my Montana coats because I was like, oh, it's gonna be 32, it's gonna be fine. And then I was like, I forgot to count for humidity. I was freezing.
Oh
oh
yeah, same with
gosh,
me. Like grew up
gosh.
in Idaho, I'd wear shorts in the snow and stuff, and then
I'll start
uh
my career when it's 10 and a t-shirt. I'll just
yeah,
roll up.
yeah. And then I'm in Baton Rouge and it's, 33, but it's
Oh,
humid, and so I was like, "Oh, let's go straight to my bones." And
Oh, so
I
cool.
can imagine that's it. But anyway, so I was sort of because I heard about that's Polar Vortex in Newsweek, so I read about the
oh yeah.
article, and then I felt like I have something here. So because I saw this image
Yeah.
with colors. And I saw this temperature, the movie forecast make a sort of a grading of what kind of colors you see, or how hot or cold it is. I mean, so that triggered my imagination.
Yeah.
So, so that's fine. Then I'll make a piece out of it.
Yeah.
So I
Can
have
work
this,
with it.
yeah. So I have 3 movements in that piece. It's called the first movement is called Frozen City, and then the second one is called Northern Lights, and then the third moment is called Volcanic Eruption. And they are performed without a break. Since I usually am not a big fan of movements that has breaks. Okay, I have a few exceptions with my classical channel, which I had breaks, but usually because I wanted to follow the kind of tradition that Mendelssohn had. I mean, he
Mhm.
had sort of let's say a leading note to the next movement. For instance, in his violin concerto,
Mhm.
Right.
which is based upon this idea. That in the last bars of the first movement, like da 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 bum dum 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 dream and then bassoon, and now we're already in the second movement. So that was that kind of thing. That kind of idea I wanted to use in that symphony. So in my other works also, I've done that several times in Snow Queen, for instance. I mean, I'm not the first composer to have done it. I'm probably not the last ever, but but it's a very effective technique to do that. I mean, unless the only chance is to tell the audience now it's the second moment, but
Right. Right.
that's a difficult ballgame. That's why I made this video with to be more pedagogical, so that they can easily find. This is the first movement with this house. It's actually outside my apartment in the first image you see on that video. And then
Okay.
and then the second movement is based on overnights, which it's actually an overnights that I took pictures on when I was in Iceland.
Oh, that's so
Oh,
cool.
very cool.
Because I was taking a boat ride on the Reykjavik Bay, actually. And it was cold, freezing to death almost. And I was freaking cold in the middle of the night. And I met this, actually, an American guy from, I think it was from Colorado. And I think it was a business guy. So I'm like, hey, why don't you come down to me after the shit? I was like, okay, are you joking with me? Yeah. Hey, does he have drugs or something? So, okay, okay, what the heck? I just followed him. Okay, I went down to after Fisher, as he said. And then, a few minutes later, the Noble Lives appeared, the dance. I was like, take pictures! I take up the phone, yes. So I was taking the pictures like a maniac. I was like, I was so incredible. I was like, that was the sort of a normal shit I was doing that night. So, so it was during a festival called Nordic Music Days, and I had a night off, so I went on a boat trip. So, so it was cool. Nice. Yeah, so very cool. And then I imagined that what happens if we have these sort of climate changes. So the answer to this symphony was the climate change. What happens if a volcano starts to explode in the middle of the city, and the ice melts? Then we have flooding all of a sudden. So then it becomes a very dangerous experience to live in. I mean, it becomes a sort of almost like we see a disaster movie. Like the day after tomorrow, or even 2012, that kind of movies. Even if it's superficially inspired by it, but you can imagine it's almost like a movie soundtrack more or less. I mean, okay, I confess I write soundtracks, but
stand alone. Yeah, it's a beautiful work.
Yeah, for sure. But Hollywood hasn't called me yet. But God knows.
You stay composer right here.
Yeah, exactly.
My stuff will sell.
Exactly. Yeah, but film and theater is not too far away, I think. So.
Well, especially when you're already kind of composing a visual medium, as you think of.
Especially in drama and comedy also. I want to write pieces that are more or less like black comedy, more or less. We get sort of, you say, it's satirized by colors from impressions, I mean, with sound. I mean, we talked about, actually Bill talked about my piece, my concerto for orchestra called Goodai. This is what was an attempt to balance all of these impressions with colors at once. Through a subject called Goodai, which is used in martial arts. I mean, it's a sort of which has, this concept of 4 elements, but it has 5 elements: earth, water, fire. Let's see,
wind,
right? Air, wind, yes. And the 5th one, you know what it is? Shadow.
Ooh.
Exactly. So whether what kind of element you're standing on, I mean, it is still the same priorities, more or less, but it's a different character with each and every element, which is kind of interesting phenomenon, because I didn't know this. I mean, it's almost like you're balancing your core, more or less. I mean, if you see these people with martial arts like jiu-jitsu or karate or whatever, or conducting, for instance, they almost look like like Bruce Lee, all of them. Take for instance, Esa-Pekka Salomon, which has been a lot in the US, because he has his own like a martial arts kind of pose, more or less. So I made a journey of that piece. So it's just made basically a showpiece for orchestra. I mean, so like a concerto for orchestra with tutti and solo parts in it. So it's basically a very, because I wanted to write a piece that was based on dancing. I mean, with ballet. So
Okay.
God knows, I would love it if there would be a ballet production on that one. I mean, or a modern dance group could do it. I mean, but it requires a large orchestra, fairly large orchestra. I mean, with triple winds. I mean, standard 4 horns, 3 trumpets, 3 trombones, 2, and then timpani, and then a huge percussion section.
Yeah, there's a shitload of percussion in this.
Like, bring my earplugs for this one? No, I'm just kidding.
Because you've got marimbas and you've got all sorts of like membranic instruments, and I mean, it's crazy. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, and also I have a temple bowls like Dubachi.
Oh, okay.
Which is not tuned in this in this context, but I've heard Dubachi that is completely in tune also. I mean,
wow.
They can ring for a very long time, because I heard this sort of major ring which can last until like 30 seconds of duration.
Wow.
I mean, if you hear it like dong, I mean, if you get this sort of trance all of a sudden.
Definitely.
Eyes staring.
Yes. So I mean, because I had this workshop with my friend who is a percussionist. I mean, we tested it in the workshop where they had all the percussion instruments in the percussion room. It was like, wow, that sound. I love that. Let's. I make a recording of it. And then, I mean, it's like if you get lost in ideas. I mean, if you're empty in ideas. I mean, the best way to do it is to collect ideas which you don't normally would find if you were unaware of it. I mean, if you were too aware, then it would happen. And so this is a sort of like a blind date, more or less.
Thank you so much, and
thank you so much.
Have a great night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Bye. Good night. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Sounds of the World podcast.
I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll have links to everything in our description. So please follow those links and give them likes and subscriptions. Like we like to say, the world is a buffet of music, and it's time to eat. So go eat and enjoy and discover.
And on that note, I'm going to go have a bite and maybe a beer.
Hey, there you go. Bye.
Bye.